WADR. Promoting dialogue.
It's 6 p.m. in Dakar and Bamako, 7 p.m. in Lagos. Good evening and welcome to Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM in Dakar. And we are also broadcasting live at WDR.org. First, our top stories. Mauritanian Coast Guard rescues 42 Gambian and Senegalese migrants after boat encounters trouble at sea. Ghana's Gold for Reserves programs comes under scrutiny as IMF flags $214 million in losses and transaction costs.
We must ask who designed the arrangement, who approved it, who executed it, who controlled the risk, and why safeguards failed to prevent losses of this magnitude.
Nigeria's drug law enforcement vows to continue anti-drug campaign as it destroys seized narcotics worth $222 million. Public reaction trails rising fuel prices in Senegal amid global oil market pressures.
My name is Cherno Sadu Jallo, a motorcycle driver. The fuel price is impacting our work.
I'm a taxi driver. They have raised the prices they had previously lowered.
Please stay tuned for the details of these stories and more.
On the news, this is Veronique Joy.
Thank you for joining us. Mauritanian authorities have rescued 42 West African migrants whose boat ran into trouble off the coast of Nouadhibou while attempting the perilous Atlantic journey to Europe. The group included 32 Gambians and 10 Senegalese, among them 4 women, one of them pregnant, and 3 children. Abdullah Hassan has the details in this report.
The vessel was reportedly towed to the port of Nouadhibou after suffering an engine failure while at sea. A Mauritanian Coast Guard official reported that the migrants were taken into custody and provided with assistance in line with legal and humanitarian procedures. The group comprised 32 Gambians and 10 Senegalese. 4 women were among those rescued, including one who was pregnant, alongside 3 children. The rescue is the latest involving migrants attempting to use the Atlantic route to reach Europe, particularly Spain's Canary Islands. Over recent months, Mauritanian authorities have rescued hundreds of migrants along the country's coastline. The route remains one of the world's most dangerous migration corridors, with thousands of people from West Africa dying or going missing in attempts to reach Europe. For many migrants, the journey begins on overcrowded and often poorly equipped boats, making the long Atlantic crossing particularly hazardous.
That was Abdullah Hassan with that report. In Ghana, a financial controversy is growing over the government's program to use gold purchases to build the country's foreign exchange reserves. An assessment by the International Monetary Fund, IMF, has identified about $214 in losses and transaction-related costs linked to the program. But Ghana's Gold Board disputes the characterization of its operation as loss-making, reporting a characterization that the money was 5.44 billion CD surplus in the 2025 audited accounts. Ghana's minority leader Alexandra Afyenfo-Markin says the economic impact is equivalent to about 22 billion Ghana cedis and is calling for greater scrutiny of the transactions.
From the transactions arranged between Gold Board and Bank of Ghana, Gold Board was not an uninvolved spectator. It is a very institution with a statutory and operational mandate to buy, sell, weigh, grade, assay, value, and export gold and other precious minerals in Ghana. Therefore, the role Gold Board played in the transaction places significant responsibility on it because, 1, Gold Board participated directly in buying, aggregating, assaying, and exporting the gold. 2, Bank of Ghana provided the financing. 3, Gold Board earned fees from the transactions. But when the program generated substantial financial losses, those losses were not reported on the balance sheet of Gold Board. What kind of voodoo accounting is this? Who does this? And then Gold Board wants us to believe that it has not made losses, it is clean, and wants to mislead the people of Ghana. No, that cannot be the truth. The real question, therefore, is what did Ghana lose from the transaction? The IMF has now answered the question, which I've quoted Supra, an equivalent of 22 billion cedis. This is perhaps the most important point that we, the caucus, want to put across. If Gold Board was legally an agent of Bank of Ghana, there may be a technical accounting basis for recognizing the underlying trade losses at the Bank of Ghana rather than recording them as Gold Board's own corporate losses. But Bank of Ghana is not interested only in which ledger the loss entered. We must ask, who designed the arrangement? Who approved it? Who executed it? Who controlled the risk? And why safeguards failed to prevent losses of this magnitude?
That was Ghana's minority leader, Alexandra Afenyo-Markin, speaking there. Liberia and India are expanding their long-standing relations in several key areas. These include trade, investment, agriculture, mining, technology, health and education as key areas for stronger cooperation. Authorities say bilateral trade between the two countries reached about $390 million from 2025 to 2026, while Liberia's export to India doubled to approximately 45 million. WDR's correspondent Abraham Parker reports.
The figures were announced in Monrovia during celebrations marking India's 80th Independence Day. India's ambassador to Liberia, Manoj Bihari Vaman, outlines what he describes as the growing strength and substance of relations between the two countries. Ambassador Vaman says India values its close and cordial relations with Liberia, noting that cooperation has expanded across multiple sectors, including capacity building.
Development cooperation has also been strengthened through the IBSA Fund, India, Brazil, South Africa Fund for South-South cooperation, supporting the Women Legislative Caucus of Liberia, reflecting our shared commitment to inclusive and sustainable development. As we speak, our economic ties are also growing.
In response, Liberia's Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs, Ethel Davis, reveals that Liberia's relationship with India has matured into a broader partnership based on mutual respect, solidarity, and shared interests. She urges Indian businesses to prioritize opportunities in Liberia, assuring investors that Liberia welcomes responsible investment. Minister Davis also calls for greater Liberian participation in the Indian market, saying a stronger relationship should create opportunities for businesses and the people in both countries.
We want to see greater Liberian participation in the Indian market. No discussion of Liberia-Indian relations would be complete without recognizing the important role of the Indian community in Liberia.
The latest diplomatic approaches therefore place a greater emphasis on turning decades of friendship into practical economic opportunities between Liberia and India. For Newslink on WADR, Abraham Parker, Monrovia.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Turning to security-related matters, the Nigeria Drug Law Enforcement Agency, otherwise known as NDLEA, has destroyed nearly 330 tons of narcotics in Lagos State, the country's commercial hub. The drug destroyed on Monday have an estimated street value of 301 billion naira, or about $222 million. WDR's correspondent Usman Umar completes the story.
The operation, carried out on the orders of the Federal High Court in Lagos, involved drugs from concluded court cases and abandoned seizures. The destroyed narcotics included cocaine, heroin, methamphetamine, cannabis, tramadol, codeine syrup, other opioids, ephedrine and khat. NDLEA Director General Muhammad Buba Marwa says the destruction demonstrates Nigeria's resolve to cut off resources to drug trafficking networks.
Distributor and dealer who continues to poison our communities. I want you to hear this loud and clear from me. Your days of operating with impunity are over. Wherever you hide, whoever sponsors you, and however sophisticated you think your network may be, the long arm of the NDLEA will reach you.
Representing the Lagos State Governor, Bimbola Salu Hundeyin, warned that drug trafficking fuels organized crime, terrorism and violent extremism, stressing that Traffickers, financiers and distributors will be pursued by the law.
When institutions unite around a shared purpose, the law becomes more than an instrument of enforcement. It becomes a force for hope, justice, peace, security, prosperity, and lasting transformation.
But beyond seizures and arrests, the scale of the problem raises concerns over the growing availability of illicit drugs, particularly among young people, and the social and economic damage caused by drug abuse. Nigerian authorities are therefore calling for stronger cooperation among security agencies, improved border controls, and greater investment in prevention, treatment, and rehabilitation as part of the broader fight against drug trafficking. For Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, Usman Umar reporting from Abuja.
In neighboring Niger, the ruling military is yet to confirm or deny speculations regarding a clash between Nigerian troops and the Chadian soldiers at the country's land border. While some sources report several deaths on the Nigerian side, the Chadian Army's Chief of General Staff has denied the claims. It is worth noting that Niger, Nigeria and Chad are engaged in the fight against armed groups in the Lake Chad Basin, a joint operation that was weakened following the July 26, 2023 coup in Niamey. Sankule Janko reports.
In an official statement, the Chadian military command denies any clash between Chadian and Nigerian soldiers in the Sigudim area. Since last Saturday, the rumor has been widely circulated on social media in Niger and discussed in the public sphere. Some internet users are even claiming there are several Nigerian deaths. The Chadian army denounces this information as a rumor intended to create confusion and mistrust between Niger and Chad. However, the Nigerian authorities have not yet made any comment. This raises questions about the fabricated nature of this affair. As a reminder, Niger and Chad cooperate on security matters. Soldiers from both countries conduct joint patrols along their shared land border to combat armed terrorist groups. At this stage, an incident cannot be entirely ruled out, as terrorist fighters often wear military uniforms to deceive regular troops. This can often cause confusion among soldiers in the field. However, no such incident has been reported in a decade of military cooperation between the Nigerian and Chadian armies. While awaiting an official response from Niger following that of the Chadian army, the rumor continues to spread.
That was Sankule Janko with the details of that report filed by our Niamey correspondent Yakuba Habibulai. Turning to judicial matters, an appeal court in the Malian capital Bamako has sentenced Mohamed Yusuf Bachili, popularly known as Ras Bad, and activist Rokia Doumbia to 10 years in prison each. They were also fined 240,000 CFA francs each. Monday's ruling by the criminal chamber of the appeal court says the two will serve 3 years suspended sentences. Defense lawyers rejected the verdict in the long-delayed trial and have appealed or have planned to appeal the ruling. Imo Adet completes the story.
Activist Mohamed Yusuf Bathili, also known as Ras Bath, and Rokia Doumbia, popularly known as Rose V. Sher, have each been sentenced to 10 years in prison. They were found guilty of forming a criminal gang and undermining the credibility of the state through information and communication technologies. The prosecution had sought 10 years for Ras Bath and 10 years with 5 years suspended for Rokia Doumbia, but the criminal chamber handed both defendants 10-year sentences with 3 years suspended. The defense has rejected the verdict and says it will appeal. Laji Traore spoke on behalf of the defense.
We do not condemn the judicial decisions made in the name of the Malian people, but we contest judicial decisions that are unsuitable and that do not adhere to what we call the logic of the law. The initial judgments were handed down in Commune 4, and in Commune 4, an appeal was filed. The Court of Appeal has already acquitted Rukia, and Raj Bach has been sentenced to 18 months, which he has already served. Consequently, we believe that the judgment has been final with respect to these alleged offences. If the same facts are cited in the preliminary investigation report, we believe that these facts no longer exist. We are filing an appeal and we will see what happens next.
During the trial, both Ras Bath and Rokia Doumbia denied the charges and disputed the evidence presented against them. The planned appeal now moves the case into a new stage of the judicial process.
That was Imo Edit with that report filed by our correspondent Ali Cham in Bamako. You're listening to Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM in Dakar and online at wadr.org. Here's a reminder of our top stories. Mauritanian Coast Guard rescues 42 Gambians and Senegalese migrants after boat encounters trouble at sea. Ghana's Gold for Resource program comes under scrutiny as IMF flags $214 in losses and transaction cost. Nigeria's drug law enforcement agency vows to continue anti-drug campaign as it destroys seized narcotics worth $222 million. Public reaction trails rising fuel prices in Senegal amid global oil market pressures. Still ahead in the news, we have the guest interview and the sports news. Please stay with us.
Connecting Ghana to West Africa. This is Nadidi Tete in Accra, and you're listening to WADR 94.9 FM, Dakar.
Thank you for staying with us. In Guinea, economist and activist Abdurrahman Bellaba was taken to court on Monday, a week after his arrest. He is being prosecuted for insult and defamation against the Imam of the Grand Mosque of Conakry, Mamadou Salou Kamara. During his questioning at the Dixon Correctional Court, he rejected the accusations against him. The prosecution is requesting a 1-year prison sentence, while the defense is pleading for acquittal or a suspended sentence. Details with Augustine Coley.
The judge questioned Abdurrahman Bellaba about the remarks he made against the Grand Imam of Conakry in his Facebook post dated August 8. However, the economist and activist stated his statement was taken out of context, adding he was not addressing the Imam of the Grand Mosque of Conakry, but Guinean imams in general. For the prosecution, the defendant's statement on his Facebook account leaves no room for ambiguity. Believing the facts are clearly established, they requested a 1-year prison sentence for Bellaba. The prosecution accuses the activist of describing the Imam of the Grand Mosque of Conakry as dishonest, corrupt, and manipulative. For its part, the defense argued for his acquittal, maintaining its client's version of evidence. It hopes for a suspended sentence. Attorney Asieni Asaita Jallo is one of the defense lawyers.
We are confident and reassured that the court will be compassionate and will grant him significant mitigating circumstances. We hope that the next hearing we will secure our client's release.
After the hearings, including the prosecution's closing arguments and the defense pleadings, the Dixon Criminal Court adjourned the case for deliberation. It will render its decision this Wednesday, August 19, 2026.
That was Augustine Coley with the details of that report. Now to academic issues. The Gambia's 2026 WAS results have triggered renewed concern over the country's secondary school education system after more than 7,000 candidates failed to obtain a single credit in any subject. While the results highlight serious challenges in academic performance, parents, teachers, and education-focused civil society organizations are now being urged to look beyond the figures and examine the factors contributing to the poor outcomes. From Banjul, Rose Samara Cates filed this report.
According to statistics released by West African Examinations Council, WAEC, 7,212 out of 19,765 candidates with complete results did not obtain the minimum grade considered a pass in even one subject. This represents about 36% of the candidates whose results are currently included in the statistics. WAEC also reports that 994 candidates have incomplete results, which are still being processed. This performance raises questions about Gambian students' preparedness and conditions under which teachers deliver lessons. Leon Prom, a teacher, explains factors contributing to the results and what needs to change in schools.
This one has to go to the student individually. The willingness towards education, the willingness towards going to school, the willingness towards passing examination, the willingness towards knowing what takes you to school. Another factor is teacher training, regular transparent assessment of teaching quality, better resource allocation, addressing foundational learning primary levels.
Meanwhile, Andrew Cabo, a parent, also speaks about the results and what families can do to support learning.
And when they come home, parents can guide them, check whether their homeworks have been done and check whether, they are doing what is supposed to be done. But most of the job should be from the school.
The Ministry of Basic and Secondary Education is responding to concerns over results of the 2026 WAS, which shows a worrying level of poor performance among students across the country. Minister of Basic and Secondary Education, Honorable Dr. Abibatu Drame, speaks on the WAS results and the way forward.
We as a sector will do some more thorough assessments of the schools to understand, especially those that have not been able to score quite good results.
The results are a reminder of the importance of sustained educational support throughout the school year rather than waiting until examination season. For WADR, Rose Samara Cates, Banjo.
Politics, analysis on major news, social matters, and all. This is A Guest.
For our guest interview this evening, in Senegal, lawmakers from the ruling majority have overwhelmingly adopted a bill amending Article 37 of the Constitution. The article governs asset declarations. If the bill is approved, the President of the Republic, the President of the National Assembly, and the Prime Minister will be required to declare their assets within 3 months of taking office and again within 3 months before leaving office. How should we understand the political battle behind the bill? Here is Mamadou C. Albert, a journalist and political analyst.
We had the feeling that the president had changed his mind because through his Minister of Justice, the president had expressed a blocked vote, which suggested that the president was no longer committed to his electoral pledge. There was a debate, but I believe the president has now changed his position because the government introduced amendments aimed at extending the asset declaration requirement to the president of the National Assembly and the Prime Minister. It is this change that explains the consensus we see today between the executive and the legislative branches. The president has the option of promulgating the law immediately, but he can also seek the opinion of the Constitutional Council. I think the president will seek that opinion because, after all, it was the council that rejected the proposed constitutional revision. What will the council say? Will it accept the declaration upon leaving office? Will it accept extending the declaration requirement to the President of the National Assembly and the head of government? That is the key question.
Now, do you think President Bassirou Diomaye Faye, who has made his political ambitions very clear, wants to use the funds at his disposal to build up his new political party and remain in power, and that maybe explains his hesitation over the requirement to declare his assets when leaving office?
No, it is clear that the president is a candidate for the presidential election. He did not create his own political party for nothing. The president will have a coalition in the municipal elections to win control of the town halls and territorial authorities. These two factors alone show that a head of state who has his own political party, who is a presidential candidate, and who wants to win control of local authorities needs political funding. And political funds are meant precisely for that. I believe there is no doubt that the president knows that in order to have his party operating across the entire country and to win municipal elections, he will need financial resources. These financial resources can only come from two sources. The first is political funds. The second is state resources. There are no real oversight of campaign financing or the financial resources of political parties. So, the president will not be an exception to this rule. He has no other alternative, given that he has abandoned the political commitment he made as a candidate in the past.
Of course, we know that the parliament adopted the bill regulating asset declarations on Monday. The president can simply promulgate it, but the government says it could also be put to a referendum.
I believe he simply wants to buy time. Senegalese people know that the president is not going to call a referendum because politically that would be suicidal. If the president were to ask Senegalese citizens to vote in a referendum on any issue, and if the people disagreed with him, he knows they would punish the president at the polls, whether it was a referendum or a municipal election. We can see this in even the fact that the Republican electoral calendar has been suspended. The president wants to buy time. His objective is to dissolve the National Assembly. He cannot dissolve it before 2027. He is not going to organize a referendum before the end of the year because that would be political suicidal. The president cannot take that risk, so he is simply buying time.
That was Mamadou C. Albert, a journalist and political analyst speaking. Now to sports, and the Nigeria Football Federation has asked the Super Falcons technical crew led by coach Justin Madugu to step down with immediate effect. The decision follows Nigeria's disappointing campaign at the 2026 Women's Africa Cup of Nations and their failure to qualify for the 2027 FIFA Women's World Cup for the first time. The NFF announced the decision in a brief statement on Monday. FIFA has ended its working relationship with Chief Operating Officer Kelvin Lamore less than 3 weeks after he publicly criticized President Gianni Infantino over the abandoned FIFA Forward Enterprise Plan. FIFA confirmed that Lamore left his position on August 17, 2026 after 2 years with the organization. The governing body thanked him for his service but gave no further detail on the reason for his departure. Barcelona have reportedly agreed on a deal worth 70 million euros to sign Spanish midfielder Rodri from Manchester City. The 2024 Ballon d'Or winner has completed his medicals in Barcelona and is expected to sign his contract. And that's all for the sports news. And with that, we have come to the end of this edition of Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Ismaila Kamara and Maudo Drew for the technical assistance. Do interact with us via our social media platforms, X, Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook at WADR English. I am Veronique Njai. Good evening.
We thank you for listening to Newslink in Nigeria on Love FM Abuja and Darling FM Owerri. In the Gambia on Hot FM Banjul, Hilltop FM and Veritas Radio in Serekunda. Thank you for listening on Alternative Youth Radio Lofa County, Liberia, Radio Kegaman in Nimba County, and DCN Radio Riverses County. A big thank you to Radio Baft FM in Sierra Leone for listening, and in Ghana we thank Radio Pad in Damango and Royals FM in Wenchi. Thank you all for listening to Newslink.